Hello, everybody, and welcome to this morning's program with Turnstile Tours. My name is Doug Chapman, and I'll be your host this morning. I'll be your guide for our program where we're visiting with one of my favorite jewelry makers here in New York City, Carrie Bilbo. She'll be joining us in just a few minutes. But I want to take a few minutes to welcome you and tell you about what we're doing here at Turnstile Tours and about some of our upcoming programs. As many of you already know, Turnstile Tours gives programs and tour programs here in New York City in partnership with different community and nonprofit organizations and different artists and businesses here in New York that we feel are doing really interesting work. And what we do is we help those organizations and our partners build capacity to share their story with the general public like yourself. And since the shelter-in-place order has come through, we've been bringing that program, bringing those intentions online here to share these programs with you, to keep our staff employed and to keep in touch with our valued partners, and also to keep in touch with you, our guests and our friends at home, both here in New York City. And I want to welcome especially those of you who are coming from further afield here to join us today. So just a few housekeeping elements before we get underway. If you'd like to turn on your closed captioning, I'd like to invite you to do that. We have Stefan Dreisbach-Williams, my colleague here at Turnstile Tours, doing the, actually working as a producer on this show. He'll be interacting with a chat function. And then Brian Hoffman is handling the captions for you today. So those closed captions are available to you if you are hard of hearing, or if you just are in a place where you can't have your volume on. So, and also please feel free to interact with us, ask your questions via the chat here today. As I mentioned, my colleague Stefan will be interacting with you there and answering your questions, and we'll be throwing those questions to Carrie as they come up as well. So, and there's a couple of different things you can do with the chat function. You can chat with all panelists, which will come to me and to Stefan and to Brian and to Carrie as well. Or you can have a chat with everybody who's joined on today in the all participants function. And so you can see those options for yourself down over in the chat window. So without any further ado, actually, let me tell you about some of our upcoming programs just before we get started here. Soon on Wednesday, tomorrow, we'll be visiting the Essex Street Market, which is a fantastic new public market here in New York City. I say new, it has a new location. It's been open just 1 year, and we'll be visiting that tomorrow. Following on the food theme, we're going to be visiting with my colleagues here at Turnstile Tours to look at the history of the supermarket here in New York City. Then we'll be visiting the Brooklyn Army Terminal to take a deep dive into some of the unknown elements from the archives of that institution. And then on this coming Saturday, we've got a very special opportunity, kind of a really wonderful guest coming on in Jennifer Egan, who is author of the book Manhattan Beach, which is a very popular sort of historicalized fiction novel that focuses on the Brooklyn Navy Yard and women working there, in particular during the Second World War. We'll be visiting with Paul Campbell, also an artist at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. He does some amazing work painting with toys, which is a fascinating project, looking at carousels of Brooklyn. And then coming up on Tuesday, a week from today, a program about a lighthouse in New York Harbor, which seems like a fascinating story, which was actually an inhabited lighthouse up until the 20th century, I believe. So join us for that next Tuesday. So that's what's coming up. But today, I'm delighted to bring on Carrie Bilbo. So Carrie, I don't know if you can join us now. If we can get Carrie to come. There she is. Hi, Carrie. So welcome. Nice to have you here.
Thank you very much.
And right. Okay, so that's interesting. So we're just gonna spotlight this video for us here. Fantastic. So welcome to the program. How's it going for you? How are you managing with the challenges of staying at home, and what's life like for you these days?
I mean, life isn't super different as much for me. I'm someone who works by myself, so
Right.
So for that, I still, work by myself, come in the studio.
Not too much of a shift for you.
Yeah, working less.
Working less, yeah.
But less heat coming to the studio at
Coming
least,
to the
but,
studio,
yeah.
and your studio is at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and we were just catching up beforehand, and I think I've had a chance to visit you there maybe about 3 or 4 times, I think, oftentimes bringing school groups through, largely from the Pratt Institute of Design, to come and visit you in your jewelry studio and take a look at your process. So it's we're so glad that you're able to join us today and to spend some time with us. But I know some of our guests today will have seen some of your work, but a lot of them wouldn't have. So I think a nice way to get started might be to I know you've prepared a bit of a slideshow for us where we can see some of the jewelry in hand, and maybe we just sort of dive in from that perspective. And again, if you're at home today, please feel free to ask questions if you wanted some pretty interesting work that Carrie's put together. You know, I should mention that, well, that's, you know, you've built quite a name for yourself, and with a very unique perspective within the jewelry making community here in New York City and abroad. We were catching up earlier that some of your work was selected to be part of a collection of down at the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. You've been recognized in the New York Times, and your work has been featured in Vogue magazine in Style. So some pretty nice little accolades for a jewelry maker. So let's take a look at some of your work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let me get my screen up here.
So there we go. That looks great.
Yeah, so this should be it. All right. Well, so yeah, I'm Carrie Bilbo. And so I guess the place to start is to first tell people that I went to Pratt Institute, which is an art college just up the street from here, actually. And I graduated in 2009. And that's the place to start because that is where I first learned and never made a piece of jewelry before. And so
And what? Well, okay, great. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. So this is so the important collection for me would be my senior thesis collection, and my senior thesis collection was all based on phobias. And I was inspired to do phobias by the cicadas coming out in the summer in where I'm from, in Kentucky, Cincinnati area. So I focused on 3 phobias. Phobia of insects, spiders, and trees. And this is obviously, these are a bunch of brooches I made for arachnophobia.
Wow.
So, and I talk about my senior collection, which these are some of the pieces as well. These are cicada wings in all of these.
Okay, let's go back to the spiders just for a second. Now, are those what you would wear those as a brooch? Is that what that?
Yes, this is just a stylized shoot where they're on the skin. Obviously, they all have pin backs, and they were brooches.
Interesting.
Yeah. But then this was another piece for my senior thesis, and I reference all these because your senior year and your senior thesis you work on for the entire year, and it's the first time you develop your style and aesthetic and just overall, express your own creativity, what you want to make. And so that sort of led me to where I am now. So these are some of the pieces from my senior thesis.
So fantastic, Carrie. And now you mentioned that you said you hadn't made a piece of jewelry before. But you were obviously at an art school. What type of creative work were you doing before jewelry sort of came into your life?
I was always a creative person, making things, and so I knew I wanted to go to art school from the very beginning. But then they asked me to declare a major. I declared painting because I was doing a lot of painting. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until I took a jewelry class as a sculpture credit that I decided to switch my major.
And then didn't look back.
Yeah, I mean, I love painting. I saw more of a career option. I thought I was learning more. It was a whole new skill that I had never done before. So.
And was phobia or nature a theme in your painting at all, or was that something that emerged?
Sort of. I did a lot of portraiture actually in my painting, but yeah, I've always been interested in how things attach themselves to the body. So my thesis name was called The Attachment of Fear. So it was about how phobias attach themselves both mentally and physically, like jewelry attaches itself physically. So a lot of these pieces sort of had this very conceptual, like this neck piece that goes around her is, kind of, to one viewer, it could be strangling her, to another, it's protecting her.
And so that's obviously a piece that's been inspired by a tree branch.
Yes.
But
So that one was under my dendrophobia.
Dendrophobia, fear of trees.
Yes.
But that's in fact not a tree. But that's a what material are we looking at there?
That's solid sterling silver.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was made from a process called lost wax casting process, and cast all the branches in little pieces, and then
so
and then put them all together.
For us sort of just simply how that is it possible to do that, simply to describe that process, simply to give people a sense of how you can create such an intricate design like that?
So for this piece particularly, I used branches and then I casted them into silver because some artists might want to, if they're doing a branch, carve it themselves out of wax, which is something you can do. But I love the process of getting this texture that I can't control, this sort of organic texture and so instead of like carving it meticulously and going crazy on that or something, I like to cast it. But what you do is, so you have a wax, like a piece. I don't think people can actually see
Not
me.
yet. Well, we should do that later. Yeah.
Yeah. But you have a piece of wax and you attach it and you pour some plaster over top of it, and then you essentially melt the wax out, and you have this negative space that then molten metal is then pushed into to create this piece, and then
that mold. Fascinating.
Yeah, which is also how you can do production art as well.
Right. So you can reproduce these works, and so and the stuff that
these are all one of a kinds from this collection. Obviously, these were from school.
Oh, right. These are part of your thesis. Wow.
Yeah.
I can see why they liked you that year. This is really exceptional work for as an undergraduate. It's kind of mind blowing. Anyway, I don't want to, we could talk about this slide forever, but let's see.
Yeah. So here's some more pieces from that thesis. The branches again, sort of forming a mask of like protection, but also, hiding.
Right.
And then
more cicada.
And so then when I graduated, I went out on my own, half a year, a few months later, decided to do my own first collection. And after working for an entire year on my thesis collection, I, of course, was inspired. And some of my first pieces that I put out in my collection were either taken directly from my thesis, or they were like a more wearable version of my thesis work. So you see this headpiece here was very popular that you're looking at, but not super easy way to, that's not an everyday wearable thing. So my more wearable thing you can see in this slide is in the top left is this more wearable hairpin.
Right, slightly a little more subtle element. We have a question coming in from Howard. He's wondering if in your thesis presentation, were the photographs that we're seeing part of your senior thesis, or was it just the items, the objects themselves?
For the show itself, I didn't have any of these photographs. Some of them I did afterwards. Some of them I did around the same time, but they weren't presented in the thesis show.
So we're seeing some pendants here. And what was the inspiration for the hanging loop?
The like gold and silver shape in the middle.
Correct. Yeah.
Those are actually, I call those my wing shape pendants. So if you turn them to the side, they're actually like an abstract version of shape of a wing.
Oh, okay. I see that.
Yeah. So these are not my thesis anymore. So what I'm showing now is some of my first pieces I put out in my own first more sellable small production line.
Right. Beautiful.
And so some of the pieces, like I said, the hair piece is inspired by the bigger pieces, but the bark ring, which is probably, it has been one of my more popular rings throughout, I still make it, is that was a direct, I made 3 of those in different styles for my thesis. And then I took my favorite one, and that became one in my first production line.
And that's the lower photograph there,
yeah, that bark ring.
And that's in gold, is it? Right there?
It's gold plated. Yeah, it's pretty big to be in solid gold. And then these were some of my other pieces in my first collection.
Beautiful. Yeah. So phobias and nature, and that really has set the foundation for your career to this point. That one.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's sort
we're gonna and so you'll see that I'm about to show some other collections that I did afterwards that were sort of offshoots, not from my main collection, but so I would say that what connects them all though is that I've always had this fascination with textures and details and just the little things, and those always come out, I feel like, in all of my pieces, textures and details in general, but nature particularly.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I'm a very like intricate, like detail oriented person to begin with, so it fits. So going on, this is another collection I did. I had some friends at Pratt who also used to be in the Navy Yard actually, and they were making their one of their big breakout fashion collections, and they asked me to do the jewelry. And so this is a line I did with that. Some of this stuff strays very differently from the nature, but it also sort of it fits in. It's different, but the same. There's nature in there, but there's also some very like geometric shapes as well.
So would you mind going back? Because I actually wanted to ask you about this. So that's a necklace in the middle there. Is that correct?
Yes, and those are all antler slices.
Okay, that like actual ant or cast or something that you've cast to be like an antler slice, or
no, they're actual physical slices of antler. Yeah. Right.
So you've actually used the material there, and then that's a brooch, and then on the right hand side, is that another antler piece there?
Sort of. It's just sort of an abstract. The main inspiration for this collection was for them. They said that they were imagining a Grey Gardens type character of a woman and her slow descent into madness, and so I picked up on that and sort of drew inspiration and got. I was trying to mimic bones and marrow and hair and things you could make jewelry out of. So in place of bones, I got these antlers because this particular type of antler kind of has like a bone marrowy look in the middle. So they kind of were supposed to look like bone slices, and then a lot of the textures like in here are mimicking or looking after like bone marrow. And
yes, and that's and where do you get antlers?
Just online. Actually, it's a very common material that's used with like knife making for the handles and things.
Of course, right. There's already a market for that. Interesting. Cool.
So these are pieces again inspired sort of by that same collection in bone marrow. Although this is pumice, I pumice with acrylic and whatnot, and I get that little bone marrowy look.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And then
go ahead.
Then I was just moving on to another fashion designer that I worked with briefly was Christian Siriano, which everybody probably knows. He liked some pieces from that collection and from actually a few pieces I did while I was in school that weren't part of my thesis. And I sort of made a bunch of pieces to go into his show.
Beautiful. Oh, wow. Right. And
some of these less wearable, like these big bat wing earrings and this big ring you can't see that she's wearing in the right picture. But, for going down the runway, you have to make a big statement. So they were bigger pieces.
And it's interesting. I had never really thought about this about your work, but with the previous connection with the fashion designer at the Navy Yard, the connection with the, what was the theme of that a woman descending into madness? Is that what you said?
Like Grey Gardens. Have you seen them?
Right. It's an interesting connection to your phobia theme. I don't know a lot of jewelry designers with that sort of dark beauty through line. Yeah. Quite interesting.
Yeah, and that's sort of something that's always been interesting to me as well, like finding beauty in the what someone else might not find beautiful, like the cicada. People were terrified of the cicada, and that inspired my whole thesis that people were afraid of cicadas because I thought they were really beautiful if you looked at them up close.
That's interesting. In a lot of creative activities, that's often a nice, you're something that only you might understand. That sort of unique perspective that you have is such an interesting thing to follow. And those are those bat wings?
Yeah, so his whole collection, Christian Siriano's collection that year, was that he was inspired by bats and bat wings in like old 20s horror movies and things like that.
Wow.
So then next collection, very different, very colorful, probably the most different work I've done to this day. But it fits in because I am an avid traveler. I love traveling around the world. And so after I traveled to South America, I was very inspired by not only the nature, but the textiles that they produce. And so I sort of was like, how can I need to make a collection off of this. So these pieces still incorporate nature with these branches and whatnot, but also these very geometric forms following their textiles.
Carrie,
and then,
sorry to interrupt. A couple of questions. One, did the antlers come pre-cut or did you have to slice them?
Pre-cut. I wasn't interested in sometimes things like that are easier to get pre-done.
Mm-hmm. And got a nice little comment from Cindy, of course, at Turnstile Tours, whose wonderful dog Salty is not allowed to come near your studio because of the inclination to chew on antlers and to destroy some valuable valuable content. We've got to keep an eye on your pet, and I know you have a visitor in your studio today. We'll see them later on. So so you're in South America, and remind me which country did you say?
This specifically was after I went to Peru, but after in the middle of making some of this work, I also went to Bolivia, Brazil, Argentina, and Chile.
Wow, such vibrant, beautiful colors. And those are earrings up in the top right, are they? That's just for scale.
Yes, those are earrings on the top right. Yeah, it's kind of, I kind of put these all in here, so nothing's really to scale exactly. Yeah. So that's that collection. And so next on to the next slide is, even though I did those other things, I still kind of come back to I guess you could say my roots in that I still really love cicadas. And so I'm still making and putting out new pieces that include cicada wings. So these are ones that came a little later down the line.
So that's an actual cicada wing that you've got?
So every single one, all four of these pieces here are a cicada wing inside. Mm-hmm. And by taking something like the cicada wing, which you might be afraid of or something, and putting it inside a frame like this, it totally changes your entire thoughts on it and has you have to look at the details of it. Like you can see every vein in these wings. A lot of people think these are stones too, and that's interesting.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you've ever had anybody wear one of your pieces who says, I'm always afraid of insects, but I'm going to wear this so that I can learn to love them. Has anybody ever?
I mean, I feel like I've heard people say that before. Yeah. Yeah. No one with like a deathly fear, but yeah.
Sure. Well, that would be maybe unadvisable. But I have to ask now, where do you get the cicada wings from? Is that?
I source those, and I get a lot of people that ask me, like, were they humanely killed? And I have to answer is that cicadas, if anybody knows their life cycle, they actually are only living above the ground for like 10 days to 2 weeks. So you don't really have to kill them; they just die on their own.
Right. That's something. There's something to think about there.
Yeah. But I buy them from. The same sort of websites a bug collector or something would buy them from.
Yeah, cicada.com. Fascinating. Yeah.
And then I started, as I've moved on, I started getting into more, I wanted to get into more high end. And I started working with gold more. In the beginning, that's very hard to do because, I can't afford gold. But once I got more into establishing my jewelry business,
dried insects to gold is a bit of a leap in material costs.
Yeah. There was still silver in the other things. I was making them more hand, but and there was this phase where I was very into like the white and gold. And so I got into making porcelain. So these things, these bracelets on the left are porcelain.
It's such a beautiful combination, you know.
And
like
then the pieces on the
bone.
right are 14 karat gold with Herkimer diamonds. But these stones are very interesting. They're not actually diamonds. That's sort of a marketing term. But they've been coined the name diamonds because they have this sparkle, this natural facet. These stones are all uncut. They grow in this interesting double terminated quartz like shape. And these are actually mined in upstate New York.
Oh, interesting. Wow. The ivory color of the ivory and gold is such a beautiful combination.
Yeah, I was very into that. I actually designed so many more pieces for that collection that never got made. There was some logistical things, no time, but I always have like a million more design ideas than actually get produced. Getting it out there is the hard part.
Good.
So here's more pieces from that collection with the gold and the Herkimers. But then in the end, I still, like, after doing some more high-end stuff, I went back, and when I did that show in the Smithsonian, I wanted to get back to my roots almost, I guess, again. And I was still drawn back to these nature and insects. So I did some, and I also wanted to get more into doing some one-of-a-kind pieces again. After doing production for years, you know, and not always getting my designs out, you know, I wanted to get back into doing some more one-of-a-kind pieces, some showstoppers like I did in my senior thesis. Right. So I created a small collection of a few pieces with insect roots, the cicada actually here. And then these earrings are my chrysalis earrings, which are inspired by a moth or a butterfly or something coming out of a chrysalis.
Right. Beautiful.
And another one of cicada, and then on the right is cicada inspired these wings.
And I suppose this is as good a time as any, but I know we'll be sending out an email afterwards with some links to your social media and your website, but Stefan can and we can mention, and Brian can mention now that you know, a lot of these objects are available for sale. These are things you can enjoy yourself, which is you know, just want to you know, plug that for all of those folks at home. I've always enjoyed coming to the different holiday markets around New York City and stopping by your tables and looking at your things. Yeah.
So yeah, some of these pieces I'm, you know, are still sometimes available on the website or production, so I make them. So now on to the next thing is, after I said, you know, I really wanted this need to make bigger pieces again and more show-stopping, one-of-a-kind pieces. At the same time, over the years, besides my production work, people kept asking me to do engagement rings and things, and I started doing more wedding. And so after some soul searching, I decided to do more a high-end line and do more one-of-a-kind show-stopping pieces. And I thought, and joined with, you know, the need to be in the wedding market. Plus, you know, my friends were all getting married, and some of these pieces that they were selling in the stores, like their veils or like these little hair pieces, I thought they were very overpriced for like being a plastic manufactured piece. And so my first wedding piece I actually made that wasn't like an engagement ring was for my friend. I said, let me make you a veil, let me make you a piece. Don't buy this. So that inspired me to start my own line. And I decided to separate the brand a little bit. So this is my more wedding focused brand, but not necessarily only for your wedding. The idea with this line is that you wear it past your wedding. It's not just something
nice.
Not something that you just want to wear on your wedding, because who wants to spend all that money and it be just a cheap piece of plastic that you're going to throw out or never wear again. So the idea is that you're hopefully wearing these on special occasions, especially the hair pieces and whatnot.
It's an interesting comment on sort of wedding design culture and the ornamentation that you might wear on that day, that it's not something that you might want to carry on or that feels appropriate to carry with you longer. I just love the idea that you're creating something special that feels you know, like something that you might want to integrate into something more like a part of your life down the road. That's a lovely concept.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, you want to cherish it forever, whether you wear it again or you you know, you buy one of these hair pieces and you put it in a frame and you put it on your wall with your wedding photos as a piece of art, because each one is a piece of art. I spend weeks on each hairpiece. So that, so getting into that is that that's probably one of the specialty focused items for my line, Sweet Caroline, and that is wedding adornments. And so these hair pieces are very special. But I also do one-of-a-kind engagement rings and earrings and bridesmaid things. So in this picture, you see 2 hair pieces, and then down here is a custom, on the right, a custom engagement ring that I've done in the past.
Beautiful.
And here's a hair piece I did. This is one of my favorites, with these handmade poppy flowers and eucalyptus leaves.
And what material have you crafted those from?
These are all actually a pink, silver, copper, brass, bronze. I'm not using super precious materials, as the size, it's really hard, but I am coating all the ones that I do out of a base metal like this. I coat in a protective thing, so they won't tarnish, and they will, you know, last for a very long time.
Yeah, stunning.
And so here's another piece.
Beautiful. Wow.
Another one. And then these are, again, I do other custom pieces. These are a pair of custom earrings I did for a wedding last summer.
Those are 2 earrings on the right.
Yes.
Wow. So they're quite long and they hang.
They were big. She wanted a very big statement at this wedding. But actually jewelry as a piece of artwork also has to be functional to be a piece of jewelry. And so I kept telling her they were going to be too heavy, and she was like, it's fine, it's fine. So
I guess that's what
actually,
I was thinking.
no, she did wear them, but and I made them as light as I could. I even did a different material than I was used to for that purpose. But I actually made them detachable, so that main big flower at the top, after the ceremony, she wore these for the ceremony and pictures, and then for the reception, you unhooked all the other flowers and just wore the big main flower.
I think that's sort of at the crux of what I was trying to figure out before, was that these objects of art that you wear have a functional quality and a practical quality for the rest of your life. That seems such like a nice gesture and a really nice element there.
And so then another thing, like I mentioned, is I do these one-of-a-kind rings. These ones in this picture are all, except for the middle one, like these 3 rings are all one-of-a-kind rings that could be an engagement ring or could just be a special occasion ring or something. But they're all ones they weren't commissioned. I made them and people can buy them. As opposed to a big part of my business is doing custom engagement wedding rings. And so here's some designs I did for a ring a long time. One of my actually early engagement rings I did, but still one of my favorites. And then this was the final ring.
Yeah.
People also come to me for a unique ring. They don't want your typical typical engagement ring. And so these were some designs for second round and third round of designs for what eventually became this engagement ring.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, and so that's where we are now.
Fantastic.
So
I know you're in your studio in Brooklyn, in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and I know that it might be kind of fun for us to take a look around with you, just to see what kind of workspace and process results in such fabulous work. So maybe if you could unshare your screen.
Yeah, let's see.
Down at the bottom. There you go.
I think I'm unsharing. Oh, nope, stop share.
There we go. And so I will spotlight for everybody the camera on your phone, which is which we're looking at right now. And so this is your studio space. Let's take a look. Let's have a look around. Just take a walk.
Let me turn it around here.
Oh, sure. There you go.
Here we go. So this is where I do most of my work here. This is my bench.
Yes, and Cindy and Andrew are just reminding me, and I did know this, but that Andrew's wedding ring was made by you, which is beautiful. I don't I can't show it to you, but it's a lovely piece.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then
I see some antlers there and a rice cooker.
the rice cooker is it's called well it is a slow cooker, but I hold something that's part of the soldering process is after you solder a piece of metal, you need to put it in, it's called the pickle pot. And it's essentially an acid that eats away at the oxidation and cleans the metal after you have soldered or heated it up. So it works best when it's held warm. So we just hold that chemical at a warm temperature in there.
So yep, some science involved in everything.
Yeah.
And so some antlers and some.
Yeah. So these are some pieces. Some of these pieces in these wood trays are from my production line of work that I've done. Some different pieces, and then these pieces over here are some more one-of-a-kind pieces.
Right.
And then, of course, with all my work, I do a lot of, experiments and sampling these are all sort of like my samples of flowers that I was experimenting with before I ever got to the finished stage, before I ever got to these pieces.
Of course, yeah. So I know you've set it up for us today so we can maybe take a look at get a snapshot of your process and how some of these things get made. Maybe we could.
And also just shortly, we'll come into this room, but this is also part of my studio. This is somewhere where the bigger machinery is, but also you can see two other benches. I have studio mates who are not here. We don't run into each other that much, particularly these days, but I do have some studio mates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there anything else we wanted to see in this particular space, Carrie, before we move into the next room, or?
Yeah. So if you wanted to get started on, if I wanted to show you, I can get into a little bit of the process. Let's turn my camera around. We can get into a little bit of the process of doing a little bit of making. It's very hard for me to actually do any physical, actual making a finished piece while in this time slot, because jewelry does not just appear. It takes hours and hours and hours to make, sometimes weeks to make. But I can do sort of a cooking channel style. I can show little pieces and show you the stages of things.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm gonna.
That looks great.
I think that's pretty good.
And we can see the. Yep.
I am actually currently, I'm not just doing this for this, I'm actually currently doing these things. I am making a new headpiece, and I wanted to make this flower. And so after doing, lots of different sketches and whatnot, see, sometimes the lighting.
That's good. Yeah.
After doing sketches and whatnot, I end up copying them and making lots of copies. And then I need to make them. I've already made my sort of sample piece, and now I'm going to make more. And so the first step is I need my metal. So again, with the functionality of jewelry is you have to be able to wear it. It has to be lightweight. And that was probably one of the biggest challenges when making hair pieces and making metal ones, was that they were going to be lightweight enough. So I have to use very thin metal. Sometimes you can't buy the metal that thin. So I start with like a piece of brass like this one, just a plain piece of metal. And I need to actually make it thinner. So I'm going to take us into the other room here.
Great.
And set us up to my rolling mill. Yeah. So this is a rolling mill. And
I know we have who's our friend appearing in the doorway? We have a cameo.
Oh, he decided to wake from his rest, apparently. That's Chester.
Hey, Chester.
Yeah. So I have my piece of metal here, and then this is a rolling mill. And essentially, after I would first anneal this, which is the process of, I would take it to my torch and I heat it up to a certain temperature, and that makes the metal soft. I have already done that to this piece, so it's already soft enough. And then once it's soft enough, I can feed it through this thing, and keep feeding it through, and then make it a little smaller.
So it's a completely manual hydraulic process. No.
Yeah. So I can do this. I can make a wire half round on this side. I can change things, but essentially I roll this down to, as tight as I need it, and I keep going. Sometimes if you melt down and you want to make your own metal, sometimes you melt down the metal and you can create an entire ingot, and you can make your own sheet using this too, which I have done, but it's quite a process.
Right. And
So we will.
Is that just called a roller, or does it have a special name?
It's just a rolling mill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so now we're going to come back here to my bench. Now that I have this metal, and then I had those designs, I glued this onto this piece of metal. Usually if I'm doing this, I would, and I already did, I have a whole sheet that I fit them all into like a puzzle. And the next step is I want to drill a hole in the center of this. So this is my flex shaft. The two tools I'm going to do right now, and the two processes are probably some of the most basic but still used all the time processes and very fundamental things, part of jewelry making, is using this flex shaft and then using my saw, which I'm about to do. So I'm just going to drill a hole in the center here. Now I have a hole for the center of the flower. And then this is just a jewelry saw. It has a very thin blade on it in the center here. And I'm going to just quickly cut this flower out for you.
Great.
So probably a really quick version of it. I don't know how loud this is, but all right, good. And I have, since I'm cutting with a very thin piece of metal, I'm cutting with a very thin blade. The blades come in different sizes.
And Stefan is just commenting on the consistency of old shipyard technology with new Brooklyn Navy Yard technology. And of course, fashioning specialized elements out of metal and particular shapes is something that has always been part of the Navy Yard's ethos.
Yeah, I mean, these are definitely like methods and whatnot that are old school, but you still use for practical things and lots of different machining type things. So I cut out like this side. Essentially, maybe I'll cut out one little other side here for time purposes, but I do actually have some that are pre-cut previously. But I actually find this very meditative to cut out, just to pierce out a bunch of things. So there's pieces I've made in the past that are just cut out. So you can see I started to cut out this whole piece of metal here. Mm-hmm. And then, but over here, I have a pre-cut one.
Andrew's sharing a lovely comment that some jewelry used to be made from scrap metal during downtime by workers at the Navy Yard while it was a functioning shipyard, and we've had visitors come to the Navy Yard and with objects made by their fathers in this way. So
yeah, I bet. I feel like I meet people all the time in the Navy Yard who or in Brooklyn in general, and then I say I work in the Navy Yard, they're always like, well, my grandfather or my uncle, everybody always knows somebody from the Navy Yard.
And the cloche or the hoof claw shaped thing you're working on, does that have a special name? Your bench?
So this it's called a bench pin.
Bench pin, right?
Yeah, mine's a little. They get worn, and I replace them every maybe year or so. But yeah, you use this shape because you can get the balance of holding the piece of metal and sawing. You're supposed to saw in this area because so you're not pulling down the metal. You get the most support and holding the piece flat. And I have this piece sitting here. This is actually a bracelet that I made that is completely just pierced out and formed.
I see. And then.
So it would be the same process.
Yep. Beautiful.
And so the next step would be, after I cut this out, is using tools like this and using files. I'm gonna clean these pieces up. And there's a lot of cleanup that people don't realize with jewelry, filing. And then these things are this is all sandpaper on sticks. So sanding pieces. So when I get it to a point like this, when I get it as clean as I want it to be, that's when I'm ready to move on to the next step. And that would be actually, I would take it back to my torch and I would anneal it, which would heat it up with the torch to a certain temperature so it's soft again, because I want this flower to look like a flower. I want the petals to have nice formations and body and shape. So to do that, there's different ways. Sometimes I can do it with, for some pieces I can do it just with my pliers. But for this piece in particular, after doing some experiments, I really wanted it sort of to have a lot of different forms, bending this way and sort of just rippling. And the best way for me to do that is a style of jewelry called repoussé is a method. And so I'm going to come back over here to this other room. And I have set up here is,
oh, there we go.
Oh, sorry, lost you for a second there. I have set up here is my repoussé, and this is called a pitch pot. And so it's like tar. Essentially, think of tar. I heated it up. It was kind of molten. I let it cool, and I have these flower shapes here that everybody saw me cut out, before. And then using different shaped tools. All of these tools are different shaped tools. This is actually one that I made. This was my first tool that I made in class at Pratt, but it's very useful. But using that and using my hammer, I will just like hammer in these like wavy textures.
Right.
And so this pitch pot will allow, unlike on, sometimes you hammer things on a steel block, which is what this is. I want the shape to move, but I want it to held in place, and I want it to move only so much. So that's why you sort of just using different shapes.
In between softness. So, question: are you able to recycle any of the scrap? Do you melt any of the excess down, or?
I with gold and silver, I save everything. I save the dust. I save I usually turn in the silver dust and then the silver scrap, and then eventually, well, if it's big enough, I reuse it or do it for something else. But if it's really tiny, I just turn it in, maybe every 1 or 2 years, and I get money back for it.
Oh, wow.
But with gold, I sometimes save the scraps and I melt them down, and I can make little tiny flower ornaments on rings or things. Using my rolling mill, or if I'm in a pinch and I need a sheet of gold, I can make the gold sheet if I need to with scrap.
Beautiful.
So that's that. This is the repoussé. I didn't really get too far into it, but there's
it's beautiful. We get the idea. Yeah.
And then also I can show you for the center of my flower, I like to have a sort of a half ball shape generally for that. And so I can show you one of my most asked about tools in the studio is this dapping block. So essentially, this has all these different spaces here, and then each one of these fits into one of these.
So that goes, I see. Right.
So when you're shaping a piece of metal, a flat piece, like so, if you can see it, I have this little circle here. This is just going to start. You don't want to start with the tiniest shape. You can't immediately just hammer something into a ball. You have to start big and work your way down. And so for this, I don't have to start very big because it's not very big to begin with. But I'm going to find its fitting shape, which is this one.
Right.
Hold on, I just have had the wrong type of hammer here.
Okay.
And with that, you essentially just work your way down until you have a full, like whatever shape you want it to be. Right now, it's sort of like a little flat, but it started to curve. But that's what the dapping block is. And then this one is just a bigger dapping block if you need a really big shape.
That connects to a different base.
Yeah, these have their own bases like this.
Yes.
Yeah. These are all steel, so they're heavy.
They're quite beautiful. Of course, they look like mushrooms, and To me, they look like a musical instrument, but then
Yeah,
everything looks
it's definitely my mode. When I have studio tours and people come in, they always ask what these are first.
yeah, beautiful.
So now we can go back into the other room and I can show you a flower that I already, um, hopefully you can see my, hopefully you can see this. Sometimes it gets a bit hard, but this is, it's not a finished piece, but
Yeah,
you
we
can
see that.
see sort of the ripples that I created to create this really like flowy, flower, and different pieces. And then this is like the half circle that I was talking about with using the dabbing
Oh, okay.
block. And then I soldered on a wire. So using that, I have these 3 forms, and I drilled that hole. So this is how I essentially put together a lot of my flowers, especially the layering ones. Obviously not all are the same, but using that, and this is just going to be a temporary hold together, but
You sort of layer them together.
yeah. And I also, like I said, I can do some little forming after this. Like I'll go in and get some bends in the flower, but essentially this forms this finished
Beautiful.
flower piece
Yep.
that would then kind of go on a hairpiece.
Beautiful. Amazing, Carrie. So interesting for people to see the level of intricacy and detail and time that it takes to produce these handcrafted objects. It's not something that people would necessarily have a perspective on or a concept of. It's such a beautiful piece of work. I have a question here as well. Ed would like to know if when you were at Pratt, obviously you've put together not just one, but essentially 2 businesses. Do they teach business at Pratt? Is there like a self-management element, or is it sort of not
It is built into the jewelry program to do more the business side of things, and whatnot. And I think it's even better these days. I graduated from Pratt. It'll be 11 years ago now. So all of the stuff that we did, it's gotten even better. They've gotten more attention, more of that. So and I am pretty up to date with their program because I get a lot of interns from Pratt, and I keep in touch with my professors. But they're even better now. They have CAD classes for 3D printed jewelry. They have more business tools and whatnot. Their shows have even gotten better since I was a senior.
Yeah, amazing. And do you do any teaching yourself, or just as sort of a guest sometimes?
I have done some workshops in my studio in the past, and some private lessons, and then I host interns. But other than that, I don't do any, I'm not a professor anymore.
Right. Not yet, anyway. Still too busy.
I don't have a master's degree, so there's only so much teaching I can do.
Right, that pesky little thing. So we're at the end of our time here. Thank you so much for taking the time to come to your studio and set all this up for us today, Carrie. It's nice to see you, first of all, and always enjoy talking to you about your work. So fascinating. Is there any? I just want to make a moment here for people to ask any final questions that they might have been sitting on. Or itching to ask. Now's a chance. We have a minute or two to address that, and of course to reaffirm that Carrie has some amazing websites, and you can contact her about doing individual commissioned work if you have a wedding or a special event coming up. You couldn't find a better person to collaborate with on, creating the beautiful objects for that day, or even just, jewelry for an everyday wear. Instagram, and Stefan will and Brian will share those links for you. Is there anything else?
And if you follow my Instagram, I've been trying to do more sort of jewelry examples and making. I've been showing. You get to see a lot more process, sort of, on a daily basis when I'm in here making things.
So an entertaining Instagram to follow as well. Is there anything else you wanted to show us that you've got lying around there? Some special. Let's take another look at the flower that you built for us. We can just hold it up to
example.
the camera.
Yeah, built. So yeah, hopefully you can sort of.
maybe just take
see in
another
this
minute to
lighting.
appreciate it. Yeah. I don't know, the way you're able to take metal and turn it into this organic form and give it life is really astonishing. I'm reminded of the work down at the Biobat Art Space, a program we did some weeks ago about artists that work that are inspired by nature and working in relationship with artists and scientists. In many ways, you're in that same vein, borrowing on the biological sciences and even psychology as an inspiration for your wearable art objects, your jewelry, your functional art there. It's really quite a fascinating combination of elements to weave together, biology, art, and psychology.
Yeah.
I don't know if it sort of lives in your world as sort of those multi-layered things, but I imagine there's a master's thesis from any of those disciplines to be done, and you could use your work as a, as a case study.
Yeah.
But yeah. So will you continue this piece that you've just created today, or?
Yeah. So that piece, like I said, I'm creating a brand new headpiece that'll just go on my website for sale.
And is it like one of the other headbands that we saw there on your bench?
A little different. It's like they all sit different ways. Like this one is sort of sits in the back as a comb. And then another one, this one sits in the back, but it's sort of a circlet style, kind of like on a hairdo like this. It would be kind of like that. And then another style that you would sit is like a barrette, which would kind of sit in the side like that. And this is all similar. This was all pierced out like we did with that process. This is all pierced out metal.
Beautiful.
That's then just formed. But the one I'm doing now, I'm actually, it's going to be more of a hairband style.
I see.
It's going to kind of be more of maybe kind of like a crown hairband.
So there would be some of those petals spread around that band. Carrie, thank you so much. I'm going to let you get back to your day. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and hopefully we'll see you in the studio in the not too distant future.
Yeah, hopefully things will open up and we'll be able to. And I am still, we forgot to mention that I am still making work, but obviously if you order something from my website, it would just depend on what you ordered, whether I could make it right now or not. I can make some things, but the jewelry industry, like the jewelry district in New York City is closed down. So if I need certain materials, it takes me a while, or I might not be able to get them at all.
But still worthwhile getting in touch to find out what's possible.
But yeah, as soon as they you can be on my wait list of something to get a piece. Or like I said, I do have. After developing a studio for 10 years, I do have a lot of the materials and things I try to have on hand so I can produce a piece right away, but it's not always the case.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll be in touch if anybody's in the market for something beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carrie, so much. So nice to see you. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
So everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Check out our website at turnstyletours.com for our upcoming programs over the coming weeks. We're doing these virtual programs every day at 11 o'clock and at 4 o'clock on the weekends. Thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.